In this episode, we're going to talk about how to actually make something inside the browser using PHP code. Because in all the past episodes, all we've talked about is all the fundamentals in PHP, but we haven't actually done anything yet we can actually use inside a website. So my thought was, for this episode, we're going to try to build a calculator inside the browser. And yes, I know a calculator is not the most interesting thing to build, but it's a really good exercise for you guys to get into the mindset when you code PHP code, because PHP is very different from HTML and CSS. So if you guys follow along this episode and just kind of write code with me, you guys should get the hang of PHP pretty quickly. So as you guys can see, right now I do actually have a regular HTML5 setup inside a front page called index.php, and this is the document we're going to start working from. Now, you guys should already know how to set up a document like this, because you should know HTML and CSS before you go into PHP. So we're just going to go ahead and get started now. Inside our body tag, we're going to start setting up our calculator. And my thought for the calculator was that we're going to have two inputs where we can actually write numbers in. And then after the inputs, we can decide with the dropdown what kind of, calculation we want to do, if we want to add or subtract, multiply or divide. And then we're going to have a button where we calculate. So we hit the button and then it actually calculates it for us. So the first thing we need to create in order to actually have a PHP calculator is a form. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a form inside my HTML code, like so. And the first thing we're going to create is an input. Now the first input is just going to be a regular text type input. So we're going to set the type as text. And then afterwards, we're going to go ahead and give it a name. Because when we use PHP code and we need to use it together with forms, we need to use names inside the inputs to actually refer to those inputs when we code PHP code. So in this case, we're going to call the first one num1. Now, we're also going to include a placeholder, just so we have something we can actually see inside our browser. So I'm going to set the placeholder as number1. So after we save this, or at least after we create this, we're going to go ahead and copy it, paste it below. And then I'm just going to go ahead and change the name to num2. And then I'm going to change the placeholder to number2. So after we have this, we can actually go ahead and refresh our browser just to see what we have so far. And as you guys can see, now we have two input fields where we can write something. And this is good for now, but we actually need some more stuff in here. Now the next thing we're going to include is like a drop down where we can actually select if we want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So the way we're going to do that is by creating something called a select. Now a select is essentially just where we go in and give it a couple of options for the drop down. So inside the select tags, we're going to go ahead and say option, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and give the first one the name add, or at least we're going to write add in between the option tags. Then we're going to copy the option tags just about maybe 5 more times, I think. And then we're going to change the first option to none. Then we're going to change the third one to subtract. The fourth one, we're going to say multiply. And the last one, we're going to say divide. So now that we have these, we can actually go ahead and give the select one a name, because like I said, we do need to give it a name to refer to it when we use PHP code. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name inside the select tag. The name, in this case, we're just going to go ahead and set as operator, like so. Now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and refresh the browser so you guys can see. Now we have a drop down where we can actually, select one of these options here. So the next thing we need to do is include a button, because we do actually need to be able to actually hit something and calculate. So underneath the select button, we're going to give it a break, because we need to go down to the next line and add a button. And down here, we're just going to go ahead and add a regular button. Now inside the button tags, we're going to go ahead and say calculate, so we know what this button does. And inside the button tag, the tag itself, we're going to go ahead and give it a name as well. So we're going to set the name as submit. Afterwards, we're going to give it a value as submit as well. And then we're going to go ahead and set a type as well, which is going to be equal to submit as well. I'm saying as well a lot of times here, but it really is a lot of repeating in this one. So after we have this, you guys will notice that we can now write something in here. Let's actually go ahead and write 5 in the first one, 10 in the second one. We can say add and calculate. Now what you guys will notice is that as soon as we hit calculate up in the URL, after our actual URL, we're going to get a question mark. And after the question mark, we have num1 equal to 5 and num2 equal to 10 and operator equal to add and submit equal to submit. So this is all the information we need in order to calculate. And this is essentially how we pass on information with PHP because we usually use the URL to do this sort of thing. So what we need to do now is actually go down and write PHP code that goes into the URL and fetches this information and does something with it based on what's up here. So if we go down to our code, underneath the form, we're going to go ahead and start writing stuff. So we need to open up the PHP tags. Like so. Now before the PHP tag, we might want to add maybe some text that says, here is the answer. So we can actually, let people know that the answer is going to be here. So in between the form and the PHP tags, I'm just going to add a paragraph and say this, or maybe the answer is colon. And then we can actually start writing stuff inside the PHP tags. Now the first thing we need to do is actually check if we did actually hit the submit button. Because if we haven't hit the submit button yet and we're already checking for answers inside the URL, it's going to give us an error message. Because there's nothing inside the URL if you haven't actually clicked anything yet, as you guys can see up here. So we need to first check if the calculate button has actually been hit. So the way we're going to do that is by going into our PHP code. We're going to go ahead and say if. So we're just going to go ahead and write an if statement here. Then we're going to say inside the parentheses, if is set, which means that if this has been set already, meaning that if we did actually hit the button, parentheses again, and inside the parentheses, we're going to go ahead and check for submit. So we need to go up into the URL, and if there's in fact a submit that's equal to submit, then it needs to do this kind of code down here. So inside our parentheses, we're going to say variable underscore get, because we're actually checking for a get method. Now, we didn't actually talk about get and post method in PHP before. We did talk about it in the HTML and CSS series, but basically when we use a get method into the URL, like passing information into it, we can actually see the information up here in the URL like we can right now. If you use a post method, we can't actually see the information in the URL, but it's still there. So in this case, we can actually see the information, which means that it's a get method. So we need to ask for a get method. Then we're going to put brackets, single quotes, and in between here, we need to ask what kind of information from the URL we're actually getting. In this case, it's the one that's called submit as a name. So I'm going to go ahead and write submit. So now we're actually asking if this is actually been set. So we can actually go inside the if statement and start typing stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go back into the URL and get the rest of the answers that we've typed in before. So we can actually go ahead and create a variable. And let's just go ahead and call this one result1. We're going to set it equal to whatever's inside the URL, which has, what did we call it, num1 as a result. So we're just going to go ahead and copy our get method up here, paste it down here, and of course change the answer from submit to num1. Then we're going to copy this line, paste it below a couple of times, change the second line from result2 to result2, and change it from num1 to num2. The last one down here we're going to call operator, and then we're going to go ahead and ask for operator, because we did actually set our select up here to operator as a name. So now we've done this, we actually get the different answers from the URL itself. So the next thing we need to do is actually to tell it what to do with this information if we get a certain type. Now we can do this in two different ways. Either we can use an if statement or a switch statement in order to do something with the results. And since we did already use an if statement here, I think we should actually try and use a switch. So down here, we're going to create a switch, like so, create parentheses, curly brackets, and then we need to tell it what we're actually trying to get inside the switch here. So in this case, we want to get the operator, like so, and put it inside our parentheses, because we're actually checking for the operator. You know, if we did actually add, we need to do one certain thing with the addition. If we actually subtracted, we need to do something else with the actual calculation. So inside the switch, we're going to set up a case, and we're going to go ahead and say that if the case is equal to add, then it should do something. Well, actually, the first one we have is actually the one called none, so we should probably take that one first. So if the user did not select anything, it should do this. So I'm going to go ahead and say if they did not select anything, I'm going to echo out error, because they do actually need to select something. Well, we could actually just say you need to select a method, like so. So if you didn't choose anything, you need to actually select a method. And of course, we do need to set the none as a string. So the next one, or we do actually need to add the break as well. I forgot that, like so. So now we can just sort of copy this one, paste it below a couple of times. We need 4 more, I do believe. And then we're going to set the second one as add with a big A. We're going to set the third one as subtract. We're going to set the fourth one, I do believe it is, as multiply. Let's actually get rid of that Danish letter. Multiply. There we go. And the last one is going to be divide. So now we need to actually calculate inside instead of echoing. So in this case, we're actually just going to go ahead and say echo. And then we would like to take result 1 and say plus result 2. Like so. This is basically all we need. Down here, we're actually going to go ahead and just copy the echo for the rest of them. Like so, and like so. So now we just need to change the plus symbol to a minus on the second one. The third one, we're going to change to a multiply. And the last one is going to be divide. So now, depending on what kind of operator we choose inside our form, it's going to choose one of these switches. And the reason we need to set, the numbers is so that when we do actually choose a switch or like a case down here, it needs to do something with the information that we typed in. So now we can actually go to our browser. If I just go ahead and go back so we don't have anything, you guys can see that if I do actually go into number 1 and click 5, number 2, click 10, and then go into my drop down and say I want to add them, I can actually calculate, and you can see we get 15. I can also go in and add 20 if I want to, and 34, and maybe multiply, and you guys can see we get 680. So this is how we can build a basic calculator using PHP code, and this is going to give you guys a really good idea about how we use PHP code inside a website. Again, calculators are not very exciting to build, but it's a really good exercise to show you guys how we use if statements and how we use switches and that sort of thing when we build functions inside a website. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will actually start talking about, I think we'll take a couple more examples for the next couple of episodes, just to show a couple of other ways we can use PHP code, at least with the stuff we've learned so far. We do actually need to learn a couple more things regarding, fundamentals of PHP, but in order to, just to give you guys some examples so you guys don't get too bored, I'm going to go ahead and spend a couple more episodes showing you guys some other stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.